Hi, my name is Shannon, and I'm Willamette Week's music and visual arts editor. I'm here today with Michelle Zahner, also known as Japanese Breakfast. Michelle is also a memoirist now. Her first book, Crying in Hmart, is coming out in April. Michelle, how's it going? How are you doing today?
Going good. Things are okay.
It's a complicated question, I get it.
More loaded than ever before.
Um, so before we start talking about your book, I of course want to ask you about the fact that you hinted on Twitter earlier this week that your third album is coming out this year. So is it done? Do you know exactly when it's going to come out? Does it have a title?
I know some of those things. It was supposed to come out last year. I'm not really good at constructing lies around this, but it was supposed to come out last year. It didn't make sense for it to come out last year, not only because we weren't able to tour, but just because of the topic of the album and not being able to make videos was a pretty devastating thing for me, because I feel like the artist that I really admire and the type of artist I want to be is someone who creates a kind of world around a record, and that was really important to me. So we decided to hold off. I think that we have an idea of when it's going to come out. It's definitely going to come out this year, probably in. We'll see, but it's definitely going to come out this year, and I'm very excited because I feel like I've just held on to a lot of stuff I've worked on for so long, and between that and the book, it's like a real release for me, in every sense of the word.
What are some of the topics that are on this album that didn't feel right to release last year?
The album is about joy, and it felt, I'm sure I'm supposed to hold off on talking about it, but I felt like, the first two records I put out as Japanese Breakfast were largely about grief, and still not done with that topic. Wrote an 80,000 word book about grief and that experience that I really wanted to kind of have a new chapter where I wrote about joy and trying to be happy. I think the record is a lot about different experiences with trying to experience joy. And so it didn't really feel like the right time to release a record about that, I think.
Yeah, well, that is a nice time to start talking about Crying in Hmart. It started out as it was first a New Yorker essay that came out in, I think, 2018. So did you know that it was always going to be a memoir, or did that come after the fact of publishing the essay?
I think I had an idea. I mean, I think it really started maybe in 2016 when as a glamour magazine essay. I had written about this experience that's also in the book with this YouTube vlogger, Mangchi, who is a Korean cooking blogger who I adore. And, sort of just she was this digital guardian for me for a period of time. And it was kind of one of the first times I remember having a joyous experience interacting with my mom's memory in a way. It was through cooking. And so I started writing about that experience. And then, by nature of it being in a magazine, it got cut to down to 3/4 of this, or maybe half or a third of the size. And I was, I just realized that there was so much that it was exciting to me to write about, and that there was so much more to say. And, everything that's in the book was just all very shocking and curious to me. And I really wanted, I think I just had this desperate need for people to know what happened to me. Not not necessarily everyone, but just like it was an easier way to express to like friends or family, like, or even to myself in some ways. I had this desperate need to kind of like bear those wounds. And so I started after that writing, I guess, what I thought could be a memoir. I had no real plans for it, but I did have an idea of it becoming a longer piece. And when I got connected to the New Yorker, to Michael Agar, who edited it, he was just kind of like, send me some writing. And before I was really ready, I kind of just re-edited what was the first chapter and sent that over. And then that essay being published in the New Yorker definitely gave me the encouragement and also the means to turn it into a book.
Reading your book, all of the memories that you talk about that happened in Eugene are like really difficult memories. So I guess I'm curious, like, how much of an affinity do you actually feel or not feel?
A lot, actually. I feel like I was rereading the book recently because I sent an advance copy to one of my best friends who I grew up with, who's in the book. And she was reading it for the first time and kind of enthusiastically quoting lines back to me. And so I was like, oh, I should maybe like reread this a little bit. And yeah, I do feel like now I feel like such an Oregonian, such a Eugenian. And I do feel like my childhood, for the most part, was very, very pleasant in Oregon. And I feel very homesick for that space, especially right now. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, so much of the book is centered around my relationship with my mother. And a lot of it is about sort of our relationship falling apart and this like terrible thing having to bring us back together in a way. So the setting, for a while, Eugene was this really difficult setting for me because, you know, it went from being this very idyllic place to grow up. And then obviously as a teenager to be in Eugene kind of sucks, you know, like it's a smaller town. It wasn't incredibly diverse, especially then. You know, I think at that age, you want so badly to leave wherever you are. It wasn't necessarily, you know, because of Eugene. And then of course, returning there, you know, was during a very ugly 6 months of my life when my mom was dying from cancer. It sort of painted it in this negative light. But now that, you know, 6 years have gone by, I find myself really, and being older in general, just I miss that environment a lot. It still feels very much like my hometown.
I'm curious what's it been like watching Korean food kind of suddenly like blow up and like go mainstream in the past few years.
I think it's really exciting. I think that, you know, it's been really fun to get to like meet a lot of people online who have these kinds of shared experiences that I wouldn't have been able to connect to if I didn't write about these experiences. So yeah, I mean, like growing up in Eugene, and this is in the book too, like in elementary school, no one even knew that Korea was a country, you know, like, or there were a lot of my classmates that like did not know, that just like did not know about Korea, that I think is definitely like not the case anymore. I would, you know, if I wasn't Japanese or Chinese, it was what are you then? So for me, it is really exciting. I wish more people had been like enthusiastic about my culture growing up. I think I would have had an easier relationship to it, but it's definitely a very welcome thing. It's always really surprising to me when someone who didn't come from a Korean background knows about this thing that feels very kind of secret to me in a way.
Yeah, because I know in that video, you know, you talk a lot about how like, you know, on one hand it was like growing up people like, oh, that food is stinky and like the embarrassment, but then also like the excitement, and then but then also watching like white dudes on YouTube be like, this is how you make kimchi, and doing it all completely like wrong and being really confident about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just wondering if it's complicated at all or if it's mostly just good.
I mean, I think that it's just like, Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. Like, I think for the most part, I am really enthusiastic about, I think for the most part, there's a lot of like really well-intentioned people who just are like curious about another culture and like are embracing it in this way that I maybe like resent a little bit in some way, just because I didn't get to grow up with that, you know, like it was, if I had grown up with that, it would have been a lot easier for me. And maybe I wouldn't have like spent so much of my life kind of like pushing something that I am now so desperately like clinging so close to if I had had that experience. But yeah, I mean, like with anything, I think that those kinds of, you know, I think it's just annoying for me sometimes if I'm like, oh, like a jar of kimchi in the grocery store and then it like sucks because it wasn't made like well or correctly. It's like a waste of my time.